Hey there, how are you doing? Finn Mitchell here, Supersize Media. Nice to have you on this journey. So, one of the big mistakes that I see all the time with companies and businesses and entrepreneurs with their business is they dive headfirst into what's happening with social media. What should we set up some ads? What kind of content? What kind of platforms are we going to do? And what about our email? All these great stuff, which is so important for building your business. But there's a couple of steps before that you really need to pay attention to. And that is called your buyer persona and your competitor review. So we're going to cover competitor review in another video. But today we're going to dive deep into your buyer persona, because the deeper we get into your buyer persona, the better the impact of your marketing is going to be. So even once you get all of the kind of paraphernalia and tools and techniques down on what happens specifically on Facebook, and what about the engagement rate and all the fun bits that happen with the reels on Instagram, even once you get all the technical bits down, it still goes back to who's your buyer persona, and are you impressing them? Are you influencing them? Are you inspiring them? Are you making them take some kind of action? Because if you're not making them take some kind of action, you're not doing any marketing at all. If you're just publishing, posting, doing any old random stuff online, as marketers, we can tick a box and say, yeah, we've done our job, we've posted, we've published. But actually getting that person to take some kind of action, even if it's just about changing their mind about who you are as a company, even if it's just about beginning to position you in this particular way, then that is making them take some kind of action in terms of changing their mindset or perspective. Maybe they don't know who you are, so we're getting them to understand who you are. Therefore, we're changing their perspective. We're making them take action. All right, so we're going to be deep diving today into buyer persona. And if you stick around to the end, you're going to find a whole bunch of great information that you can use to actually build your own buyer persona as well. All right, so the struggle to reach clients in an online world is real. You might be putting out great content, but if it's only seen by a few people who are usually mates, colleagues, or well-wishers, and certainly not buyers, well, what's the actual point in spending so much time with your online marketing? This situation happens so often, and it means so many business owners wondering what on earth is wrong with their strategy, what needs fixed, or worst of all, social media is useless, or even worse, my social media assistant is useless. No, 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 no. Often it's down to what are your business principles and who is your buyer persona? Are they impressed by what you do? Are they ever going to buy anything from you? Even if you stand in front of them and shake a tin at them and give it to them for practically pennies, are they still going to be buying from you? Well, you've got to be able to impress them somehow. And at the end of the day, you can't always blame your tools. You got to look at your strategy and see if it's working. But first of all, what is a buyer persona? Buyer persona is generally one person. It's always easier to think about it as one person. You give that person a name, you call him Mike or call her Stephanie. You have a particular age range for her, or even specific age even. And sometimes you do have to have two buyer personas. Say, for example, if it's people buying gifts for people, like so the parents buying toys for children. Obviously, all the toy packaging and branding and the experience online has to be focused around the child. But ultimately, you need to have the two buyer personas because it's the adult or the grandparent or the auntie that's going to be purchasing it as well. So sometimes you do need to have two buyer personas. And you can have three or four, but I'm assuming you have never done buyer persona before. So we're just going to go with the principle of you need one to really get going and focus in on. Just think about Marks and Spencer's. There's a particular buyer persona who's going to be buying all of their clothes. No. There's a particular buyer persona who's buying their male clothes. And there's a particular type of person who's in the supermarket as well. All right. So you just get an idea of there's a specific person in mind. And you have to have that specific person in mind, because if you're talking to everybody, your content is going to be boring, very unfocused, very generic, and everybody's going to ignore it. When it comes to creating content online, you have to imagine people are just scrolling on by. And as soon as they scroll by, even if they're fans of yours, that means your content is rubbish. So you need to think again. You don't want them scrolling past your content. And if you can really focus in on that buyer persona and get them to stop the scroll, be thumb-stopping content, then you are off to the races. So remember when Marks and Spencer's, they said that they lost touch with their audience, their sales went down. It's because people were going into the shop and going, this isn't my stuff, or it's too fuddy-duddy, or it's too youthful or something. It really wasn't hitting the right spot. For any business, if you've not got your finger on the button or the understanding who your buyer persona is and what their pains and desires are, you are not going to win the business game. When you're not consistently giving your customers exactly what they need to solve their problems or satisfy their desires, you are literally out of touch, totally generic, and will never find success online. Not having your buyer persona in mind will be a complete waste of time, effort, budget, resources, and your message won't get across effectively. In fact, social ads only work if you are 100% sure that the people you're targeting will see them and will take some kind of action. So in other words, if you have that strategy where you're pushing up any old content online, you think it might work, and then you apply that same strategy to your ads, you're going to waste a lot of money and time and effort. So in order to achieve action, your outstanding content needs to reflect the main traits of your buyer persona. In a world dominated by competition, you have to let your customers know that you understand them and that your products or services can help improve their lives, or their business lives if you're in the business to business sector. So here's a question for you. Would you ever buy tickets to a Spice Girls concert for a Bruce Springsteen fan, right? Or would you ever give a brand new smartphone to your 5-year-old daughter or son? Probably not. And the reason is that you know that person, what they like or they don't like, and what they need and they don't need. The same principle applies to your customers. The more you become passionate about your buyer persona, the more you can achieve. So why not give them something they will actually like or value in terms of content? And at the end of the day, if you're going to be handing over your business to a social media marketer as a freelancer, or a business who's going to be managing it for you, they need to have a strong understanding of who your buyer persona is. Otherwise, their whole strategy will not work. So once you've reassured your customers that you understand absolutely everything that goes on in their lives, it's time for you to build a meaningful relationship that will hopefully last for a long time. So when it comes to building your buyer persona, you need to start with your most loyal customers, or your ideal customers as well. The ones who are buying frequently and the ones you only see every now and then. What are their similarities and differences? It's certainly a straightforward process that fits onto an A4 paper, but it's important to get that right. The process of building your buyer persona has to be constantly updated with the information collected from the customers. If you think that you need more, you can always ask them a few questions via digital surveys or phone calls. You can find plenty of free online survey services. To clarify, it's like when you meet a person that you really like for the first time. How do you get to know that person better? By asking questions. So, is it really necessary to have a buyer persona for your business? It's absolutely crucial. Absolutely crucial. Say, for example, you are a company that sells table salt, right? You might think, well, there's nothing fancy about that. We don't need a buyer persona on that. Salt is salt, right? Well, except it's not. For example, Who are the people that swear by Himalayan salt? What about the people who wouldn't be seen dead buying anything but rock salt? And what about the heathens that don't even self-grind their salt? They just pour it straight from the bottle. And what about the ones who only buy luxury salt? They don't want to be seen dead with any old random salt. And what about the people who buy non-branded supermarket low budget salt? What about the ones that have got eco-friendly elements to their salt? So everybody is going to identify with whatever brand it is, depending on what that positioning is going to be. They all have specific buyer personas in mind, and each distinct persona, whole marketing plan is built around that buyer persona. And it's important to have a clear definition of the importance of segmenting your market, because everyone is not your customer. All right. So basically, we need you to not just identify your buyer persona, but we need you to fall in love with your buyer's persona, because ultimately, if you're going to be creating all this fantastic content for them across email, across social media, and ads and everything, then you really have to get under their skin and understand what's making them tick. And you can't really do that unless you feel like you have some kind of emotional connection with them. So even if you're a social media marketing manager and you're having to work with a company that has a buyer persona that you don't relate to, I mean, it's a guy, he's age 50, he lives on the outskirts of the city, he's got 2 children in private school and stuff, you might not be able to relate to him, but you have to try and find a way to be able to really empathize with that person and their dilemmas in life and their struggle, particularly as regards the product or service that you're selling. Because if you don't, then the information will just come across bland, and the language won't be right, and the visuals will be rubbish, and the captions are going to be useless, and it's all going to fall apart. So that's why we put the emphasis on making sure that we have a strategy that's all about falling in love with your buyer persona. And then it's going to be a virtuous circle of mutual admiration, because they understand that you understand their pains and problems, and that you can keep on providing them with your product or service day in, day out, because they trust you. All right. So if you want to learn more about how to build your buyer persona in detail, we have a little surprise for you. We have the 90-day business sprint, which is available. Check out the links down below and make sure you subscribe, ding the dong bell, and then like the post. And I'd love to hear your comments below. I'm always live in the chat on Wednesday mornings at 11 o'clock on YouTube. So if you want to be hitting me up with any questions about how you should be putting your buyer persona together, or even setting up some kind of strategy to make that happen, then please hit me up on Wednesdays at 11 o'clock. All right, I will speak to you soon.